What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be making a video talking about what to look for when buying a 7.3 Powerstroke. Anything from 1995 all the way till early 03, OBS and the Super Duty body style like I have. First off, when you first see the truck, you do your usual like you do on any used car, you know, lay under it, look at the bottom of the doors, the rockers, cab corners, check out the bed, see what's got for rust. You know, your usual checking the interior, but everyone knows how to do that. Just looking at cosmetics, if it looks beat up or not. The main things I'm going to be talking about are to do with the engine and if it's healthy or not. So obviously check out your interior, pop the hood here, and I'll show you guys under my hood. All right, so as I said, obviously how it looks on the outside is irrelevant to this as long as the price evaluates it. It depends on what you're looking for. A work truck, something to be clean, daily driver, that's going to have a huge role on what that matters to you guys. But I'm going to be talking about the engine. A thing I like to do is just look around. As you can see right now, mine's decently clean. I was washing it earlier. And just looking around, seeing if everything's super soaked with oil, especially if you get under it. Look at your oil pan. If it's all covered in oil, you got to keep that in mind because leaks can be costly to fix and they can be hard to fix yourself. The first thing when you get under here, you know, check your air filter, make sure that's not all nasty, and that'll tell you how they've been taking care of it. And even if you want bring something that you can pop your fuel filter out, could be a good indication. See if that looks like it's been getting changed regularly or not. But the first stuff of what actually matters is check your oil, obviously. But also, when I'm looking at these, which by the way, I'm not an expert on these Powerstrokes, nor do I ever claim to be. I'm not a mechanic. I just work on my stuff for whatever needs done myself. I've had a few of these 7.3s, so I know a thing or two about them by now. But not only check your oil for the level to see if it's too low, but if it's too high, that's a red flag if you're getting contamination in there. And really smell the dipstick on the oil too is a good check to do, because if you have bad injector O-rings, or maybe the injector themselves could be failing. I'm not 100% sure how exactly that works, but I know if you're having issues somewhere with your injector, you can actually get fuel going into your oil, which is not good because then it'll fill it up and make it too full for what it's supposed to have and dilute it down so it's not as thick as it needs to be to protect your engine. So I definitely consider looking out for that. Another thing with the oil here, while the engine's running, take this cap off while it's up to temperature. Mine's up to temperature already. And check for steam coming out of there. Mine doesn't do it. I'll start it up right now to show you what this should look like. If you have a little bit of vapor, that's okay. Usually when I would get worried and walk away is if I do that trick here, you might have to have your hand on the side so it don't fall off from the vibration. But if it blows it off like that, that's not a good sign. That means you got too much blow by, which is combustion gases getting past your piston rings. So that's just a quick way to tell how healthy this motor is. And if you got a lot of blow by and it's blowing the cap off, then chances are it's got low compression, which means you're gonna be having issues starting this thing in the cold, and you're gonna be needing a rebuild sooner or later. But let's wait for these glow plugs to hit here. I'm gonna get into glow plug stuff even more in a second when I'm done showing you this. Fires right up. That's how you want these things to start. It's about 38 degrees right now, and I have had the truck running for quite a bit today, so this might not be the best test, but when it starts up, you know, you're usually going to see a little smoke out of the tailpipe if it's cold. No big deal. But as you can see right here out of that oil cap, might be hard to hear me over the clatter of the 7.3, but there's virtually no smoke out here at all. This is exactly what you want to see. That cap ain't going nowhere. It's saying right where it needs to be. So that's what you want to see. This is blowing the cap off. Either walk away from the truck, it's not what you want, or if you're okay with the fixer-upper like that, then just keep in mind, you know, make sure it's priced accordingly, because that's not going to be cheap, not going to be easy, and that could be a huge make or break of the deal here. So as I was talking about earlier, the glow plugs on these trucks are essential for starting in the cold, and You can look around here. As you can see, mine still has the original relay. I believe it's actually the original glow plugs too still in there, and this thing fires right up in the cold no matter what. There's been times where it's 3 degrees outside with a -30 wind chill, and this thing still fired right up, not plugged in, sitting all weekend for work in the morning. So knock on wood, this 180, almost 182,000 mile Powerstroke here still is holding strong. Recently, my buddy bought a new diesel 7.3, his first ever diesel truck too, and he was having me come with him to look at the trucks, and I was telling him what questions to ask the buyers on Marketplace, etc. And a lot of people would say, oh no, it doesn't start in the cold, but there's nothing wrong with it, it's just cold-blooded. That's completely false. So we'd get there using his mom's car for fuel efficiency, because we're going a decent ways on the highway, so we didn't take my truck because it'd be expensive to do all that. And we'd get there, so they didn't know that I had one of these, and they'd be like, yes. We'd get there and it'd be plugged in, and they'd say something like, oh well, all these 7.3s don't start in the cold, they have to be plugged in. Don't let anyone tell you that, because I can tell you right now, this is the second Super Duty 7.3 I've had, and I had an OBS. The OBS didn't start, but that's not normal. Something was wrong with it. These two Super Duties, this one had 170 when I bought it, my old one had 129, and both of them fired right up. Never plugged them in, like, ever, and they started up in the cold. So don't let anyone tell you, oh, it's normal. And another thing, when you get there, make sure this thing's cold. You know, you could grab, like, right here, there's not actually that much pressure yet, but like if you got a ton of pressure still in the coolant tank and you're touching parts of the motor here and it's still warm, ask them, say, hey, when's the last time this truck's been running? And if they're like, oh, it's sat all weekend, this happened. For one of them we looked at, the guy said, hey, this truck's been sitting all weekend, it is cold. Because we told him, I want to see this truck cold, because that's where the true story tends to come out on these things. If they've got the good fueling, good glow plugs, good compression, all that stuff, is it going to start in the cold? So I went under here with a little pyrometer in my hand to check for temperature, and I'd check like on the frame and the axle and stuff, and I'd see like 28 degrees or whatever it was, and I'd put it right there to that exhaust manifold or under here in the oil pan, and it would start reading warmer. Another thing, look out for, if they have it plugged in the pictures on the ad online, I'm assuming most of you guys are gonna be looking at these off of Marketplace or Craigslist. If you ever see one where it's plugged in the picture, you probably want to run as fast as you can. Same thing if you get there. There was a pickup we looked at for my buddy where we got there, and it was plugged in when we pulled in the driveway, and I'm thinking that ain't good. Sometimes I've looked at them for myself and they've been already running when you get there. That's another time you're gonna want to run, scream, and hide, because that thing probably has problems starting in the cold for sure, which is a nuisance if you live in Michigan like me. How are you gonna have a truck that can't start cold? But if you go under here, another way to check if it's been plugged in, they could unplug it right when you get there and you'd have no idea. And if it hasn't been ran, you know, your headers aren't going to be warm yet. So if you go right here, get under the truck, there's your oil pan. Yes, I have a couple leaks, it looks a little nasty, but right here where your oil filter is next to the pan, there's your driver tire. If you take that little heat gun to tell you what the heat is and point the laser right at the metal up there above that fuel filter, that's your oil cooler up in there. If you shine it around in there and it's like 60 degrees and it's a 20-degree day outside, then you know he's lying, and he had that truck plugged in. He unplugged it right when he seen you pulling in the driveway trying to pull a fast one on you. So definitely look out for that. There's a lot of shady people out there, and unless it's a screaming deal and you know how to work on these things, chances are you're gonna want to just buy it already starting properly in the cold. That's like one of the biggest nuisances on these 7.3 is cold start issues. And the next thing here, coolant. You take your cap off here and look at the color of the coolant. I'll show you what mine's looking like right now. Green, might be a little dot or two, could use a flush. It's actually worse than I thought. Those might be a couple of rust particles in there, but that's not that bad. Check the level too. A lot of people know to check if it's too low, but a huge deal is when these things are too full, where it's all the way full to the brim. That's a huge red flag, because why would someone have filled this thing up fuller than it needs to be? Well, they wouldn't. What tends to happen on these is that oil cooler down there where the fuel filter, the oil cooler down there where that oil filter hooks into, where I was saying to check if it's been plugged in or not, because the element, when you plug it in, is actually going right there. into that cooler area. So if you follow the wire under there, so what happens is them oil coolers go bad, just like on the 6 liters. And when that oil cooler is bad, your oil will actually get into your coolant. And you go in here, and if it's like a milkshake in there, or lean in and smell it. I just smelled mine. It smells like antifreeze still. It should. There shouldn't be any problem with this truck. But if you're smelling something oily in there, or it looks like oil in your coolant, you know, that's going to be most likely your oil cooler's bad. That's going to cost a lot of money. Or in rare cases, you could have a head gasket issue. You got to look out for that too if there's excess pressure in the bottle. But usually you're not going to run into that on these old 7.3s. The next thing, also when you're checking the coolant, is smell it and see if it smells like fuel. Just like how you're smelling your oil to see if it smells like fuel has gotten in your oil due to maybe an ejector O-ring. If you're smelling your coolant, and especially if it's fuller than it needs to be, or like all the way full to the max, and you're smelling it and it smells like, hey, this smells like diesel fuel, well, that's a good indication that your ejector cups are cracked, which isn't going to be as costly as an injector replacement, but you still got to tear this thing apart and get the injectors out. You got to get a special tool to get them cups out. So it's just going to be a whole lot of extra work, and if you're paying top dollar for it, you're not going to want to deal with that. So make sure your coolant's at the proper level and doesn't have any signs of oil or fuel smell in there. It doesn't look all dirty. As long as yours looks like mine and it don't smell funky, you're going to be all right. Luckily, a lot of the other stuff with looking at these trucks is going to be more basic, you know, making sure your steering ain't loose. If it needs tie rods, might need brakes, maybe an ABS light on the dash or something like that. Make sure, you know, put it in 4x4, make sure that's working good for you. A good way to check is if you're in 4x4, while it's moving forward, turn your wheel full lock to the right, and you should hear it binding up on itself. You'll know when it's doing it, and then go the other way. Sometimes these things like to have 4x4 issues, so it's definitely a good thing to make sure that that is working, because you're not going to want to get caught in a snowstorm or in the mud or something and think, hey, I got this nice 4x4, but you actually don't. Another thing, this is one thing that I learned from personal experience in buying these. When I was 15 and got my first truck, I didn't know this, and I had to learn the hard way, so I figured I'll let you guys know. Not only do you want to check your trans fluid, obviously, make sure it's nice cherry red, it's the right level, it don't smell burnt, the basics that everyone already knows. But when you get these trucks out on the road, you know, let it warm up for a minute while you're talking to the guy. Look underneath it while it's running. That way you get maybe 10 to 15 minutes of runtime, so it's up to temperature before you go beat on it. And then when you're doing the road test, you do your usual, make sure it's driving fine, steering fine, whatever else you want to check. But a big thing is get going slow. You know, you don't got to go from a complete stop and do some crazy launch and blow the guy's truck up. You know, you don't got to go too wild, maybe 75% throttle at the most. And I'll usually be going maybe 5 to 10 from a roll, and I'll let off the gas, so I'm just coasting 5 to 10. And then I'll, you know, go real quick on the pedal to like 75, even close to 80% throttle, and let that thing get through the gears. You know, I'll hammer on it, and I won't let off until I'm going maybe 70, 80 mile an hour range. You don't got to max out the whole speedometer. You just want to make sure it goes through all the gears smoothly, because if it's like my OBS Powerstroke was, you'll be going, if you're light on the gas, you know, maybe 40%, you know, just accelerating like you would if you're just driving on a normal day, which is what I did because I didn't know any better. It would shift like a dream. But then 7 months later, I was trying to accelerate a little harder merging on the highway, and I noticed, hey, this thing shifts like really bad. You'll be giving it a lot of gas and it'll shift really hard. So make sure, I left my mirror telescoped out. Make sure this thing shifts nice and smooth through all the gears. It shouldn't have a problem. It should go one gear to the next all the way up till you're in overdrive. These things here, I believe, are a 4-speed with overdrive, 4R100 transmission. A lot of people say they have problems with them, but I've never had an issue, knock on wood. But the main thing is make sure, at least at the time you buy it, unless you're fine with it, make sure it's priced accordingly, obviously, but you want it to go through the gears. And obviously, you know, it's not going to shift like a brand new car. These things are older, they're heavy duty trucks. They don't shift like the smoothest in the world. But you'll know when you're getting on it, if one of the gears kind of jerks your neck a little bit or something, then that means you're going to have a problem with your transmission. So anyway, that basically wraps up the basics here. there's not really a whole lot to these trucks. It's thankfully they're not like the new 6.7s where you got to look for stuff, make sure it's deleted if you don't want to deal with that, or you don't got to be like a 6-liter checking for head gaskets and all that head stud bullshit. You could just check little stuff like that, make sure she's running healthy, because these trucks are meant to go a lot of miles reliably, and they do that. So just make sure you know what you're looking at, look it over, do all the normal stuff. I like to get in there on the inside, touch all the buttons, make sure everything works, the normal used car stuff. But as long as you do that, look over the motor and make sure everything seems to be running right, should idle and run as smooth as mine does in this video. And as long as all those things check out, that's pretty much the bulk of what there is to these trucks. So I hope this helps someone learn from maybe some of my mistakes that I had to learn the hard way, some of the things I talked about in this video. And yeah, hopefully this helps someone. A lot of you guys, first-time diesel buyers, I don't know what you're getting into. This hopefully is helpful checking the health of a 7.3 motor. So anyway, I'll see you guys in the next one.